The neural interface crackled against Elena Rossi's temple as she descended into the Brooklyn Heights subway station, her worn sneakers squeaking against the bioluminescent platform tiles. The implant, a basic model from 2041, 3 generations behind the sleek neural crowns her family wore, buzzed with notifications she deliberately ignored. Her reflection in the train's smart glass showed exactly what she wanted the world to see. A tired 29-year-old librarian in a thrift store cardigan, clutching a metal thermos like a lifeline. The subway car's AI recognized her biometrics and displayed her social credit score in soft blue digits above her seat. 2,847. Respectable for someone in public service, embarrassing for a Rossi. The family next to her, tourists from the Midwest colonies, stared at the number with the kind of polite pity reserved for the quietly struggling. Eleanor sipped her coffee and opened her tablet to review the morning's story selections. Today's crowd would be the usual mix of local kids whose parents couldn't afford premium education pods and scholarship recipients from the outer boroughs, children who still believed in magic because they hadn't yet learned that everything had a price tag. Her neural interface pinged again. This time she glanced at the sender, Bianca Rossi _official. The message preview made her stomach tighten. OMG sis, can't wait to show you the Penthouse redesign plans. Dad says you're being so generous. Eleanor's grip tightened on her thermos. The metal grew warm under her fingers, a small comfort against the familiar knot of dread settling in her chest. She hadn't been generous, she hadn't agreed to anything. The Brooklyn Children's Learning Center occupied a converted warehouse in DUMBO, its weathered brick facade a stark contrast to the gleaming education towers across the river in Manhattan. Eleanor's neural interface automatically dimmed as she entered, the building's privacy shields blocking external data streams. Here, in this pocket of analog peace, she could finally breathe. Miss Eleanor! 7-year-old Marcus Chen bounded toward her, his second-hand neural trainer flickering with excitement. The family penthouse, the one you're letting Bianca use for her studio. Derek tilted his head, feigning confusion. She posted about it yesterday. The response has been incredible. Her engagement rates are up 40%. Eleanor's neural interface buzzed with incoming messages, social media alerts, news feeds, her family's names trending in local influence circles. She kept her expression neutral, but her pulse hammered against her temple. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said quietly. Derek's eyes glittered. His neural crown flashed as he accessed something, probably recording her reaction for Bianca's files. Really? Because the post has 3 million views already, Bianca's so excited about the move-in next month. Eleanor stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. I need to get to work. Of course. Derek stepped aside, but didn't move away. Hey, Eleanor. Can I give you some advice? Family business can get messy when there's money involved. Sometimes it's easier to just go with the flow, you know? Especially when the alternative might be uncomfortable. The threat was subtle, wrapped in concern, but Eleanor heard it clearly. She met his gaze steadily. I'll keep that in mind. As she walked away, Eleanor felt Derek's eyes on her back. Her neural interface chimed with message after message, but she didn't look. Instead, she thought about the children's faces during story time, their wonder at tales of hidden treasures and unexpected heroes. Some things, she reminded herself, were worth fighting for. Giuseppe's restaurant occupied prime real estate in Little Italy, its vintage neon sign a nostalgic beacon among the neural advertising displays that plastered every available surface. Eleanor's father had bought the building in 2039, back when the neighborhood still catered to humans instead of algorithm-optimized dining experiences. Eleanor paused outside, watching her family through the smart glass windows. They were all there. Parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, their neural crowns creating a soft constellation of light around the reserved table. Vincent Rossi held court at the head, gesturing expansively, while Rosa nodded along, her attention split between the conversation and her social media feeds. Bianca sat beside their mother, radiant in a dress that probably cost more than Eleanor made in 3 months. Her neural crown was the latest model, a delicate silver circlet that enhanced her natural beauty while live-streaming every moment to her followers. Even now, Elena could see the soft glow that meant cameras were rolling. Eleanor's cousin Marco looked up as she entered, his sharp suit and confident posture marking him as another family success story. His divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, Eleanor remembered, and he'd thrown himself into work with the fervor of a man trying to prove something. His smile was warm, almost predatory. "There she is," Vincent boomed, rising to embrace Elena. His neural interface was older, more utilitarian, the kind worn by men who'd built their fortunes before the neural age and adapted out of necessity rather than choice. "My brilliant daughter, the teacher." Eleanor accepted the hug, breathing in his familiar cologne mixed with the scent of garlic and opportunity. "Hi, Papa." "Librarian," Rosa corrected gently, not looking up from her interface. "Elena's a librarian, not a teacher." The distinction carried weight in her mother's mouth, as if the difference between the two explained Elena's entire life trajectory. "Same thing," Vincent waved dismissively. "Both noble professions, both poorly paid." The family laughed, a warm sound that didn't quite mask the underlying judgment. Elena slid into the empty seat between Marco and her teenage cousin Sophia, who was documenting the dinner with the desperate intensity of someone building their first influence portfolio. "Elena!" Bianca leaned across the table, her neural crown painting her in flattering light. "Did Derek find you at the library? I sent him to scope out your neighborhood. Such a cute area, very authentic." "He mentioned that." "I hope he wasn't too forward," Marco interjected, his voice carrying just enough protective concern to sound genuine. "Derek strikes me as the type who doesn't always read social cues correctly." Bianca's smile tightened fractionally. "Derek's wonderful. He's been such a help with the business side of my brand." She turned back to Elena. "Speaking of which, I have the most amazing news to share tonight." Elena's neural interface detected elevated stress patterns and offered meditation apps. She declined again, focusing instead on the weight of her family's attention. Around the table, conversations continued, but she felt the subtle shift that meant the real business of the evening was beginning. Vincent raised his wine glass. "Before we eat, I want to make a toast. To family, to success." His gaze swept the table, lingering on Eleanor. "And to making smart decisions that benefit everyone." The glasses clinked, but Eleanor barely touched hers to her lips. The wine was expensive, something Vincent had chosen to impress rather than enjoy. "Now," Rosa said, setting down her glass with purpose, "let's talk about the elephant in the room." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "The penthouse," Vincent continued. "Your Aunt Maria's place. It's time we address the situation properly." "What situation?" Elena asked, though she already knew. "You living there alone," Rosa said gently. "It's a 4-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side, worth $8 million at current market rates, and you're using it as, what? A very expensive studio apartment." "I live there," Elena said quietly. "It was left to me." "Of course it was," Vincent said. "Maria always had a soft spot for you, but she also believed in family, in helping each other succeed." Bianca leaned forward, her neural crown adjusting its light to catch her most flattering angles. "Elena, I've been thinking about this for months. My brand is at a crucial stage. I need a space that matches my growth trajectory. The penthouse would be perfect for my content studio." "Your content studio?" Eleanor repeated. "High-end lifestyle content," Derek added, appearing beside their table as if summoned. His neural crown synchronized with Bianca's, creating a shared augmented reality space above the table. Luxury living, fashion, relationships. Bianca's audience is hungry for authenticity, and that penthouse represents old New York money. It's exactly the aesthetic we need. We? Eleanor looked between them. Derek and I are partners now, Bianca announced, her neural crown pulsing with excitement. Business and personal, he's helping me expand into new markets. Marco's expression darkened slightly. Congratulations, he said, though his smile looked painted on. When's the wedding? We're focusing on the business right now, Derek replied smoothly. Marriage is such an outdated institution anyway. What matters is building something meaningful together. How modern, Marco murmured, taking a long sip of wine. Eleanor watched the interplay, noting the tension between the two men. Marco had always been competitive, especially when it came to matters of success and status. Derek's casual dismissal of marriage, something Marco had recently failed at, was clearly calculated. The point, Vincent interjected, is that Bianca has an opportunity to really make something of herself. This isn't just about social media. She's building a brand that could be worth millions. Could be, Elena said. Will be, Rosa corrected, with the right support. The right environment. I'm not asking you to give it to me, Bianca said quickly. Just share it, temporarily, until I can afford my own space. Eleanor's neural interface buzzed with a priority message. She glanced at the sender, a name that made her pulse quicken, and quickly dismissed the notification. Not here, not now. Eleanor, Vincent's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Be practical. You make $45,000 a year. You could rent a nice one-bedroom in Brooklyn and still have money left over if you charged Bianca fair market rate for the penthouse. It's not about the money, Elena said. Then what is it about? Rosa asked. Surely you want your sister to succeed. The question hung in the air, weighted with family loyalty and unspoken expectations. Eleanor looked around the table at faces she'd known her entire life, people who loved her in their way, but who had never quite understood her choices. Of course I want Bianca to succeed, she said finally. I just don't think she needs my apartment to do it. Apartment? Marco laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. Eleanor, you inherited an $8 million penthouse. That's not an apartment, that's a lifestyle statement. Which you're wasting, Sophia added, looking up from her recording device. No offense, but your social credit score is barely breaking 3,000. You could be living like royalty, and instead you're taking the subway to work in Brooklyn. The teenager's words stung more than Eleanor expected. She forced herself to breathe evenly, to maintain the careful composure she'd cultivated over years of family dinners like this one. There's nothing wrong with taking the subway, she said. There is when you don't have to, Vincent replied. Elena, I built this family's wealth so my children could have choices. But choices come with responsibilities. That penthouse isn't just real estate. It's an asset, an opportunity. For who? For all of us, Rosa said. Family helps family. That's how we stay strong. Eleanor's neural interface buzzed again. This time she couldn't ignore it. The message was marked urgent, and the sender was someone she couldn't afford to keep waiting. I need to use the restroom, she said, standing abruptly. Elena, Vincent started. I'll be right back. She escaped to the restaurant's small bathroom, locking the door behind her. Her hands shook slightly as she activated her neural interface's privacy mode and accepted the incoming call. The familiar voice filled her head, warm and rich with barely contained amusement. Bad timing? The worst, Eleanor whispered. They're all here. The whole family. I saw Bianca's post, 3 million views and counting. Eleanor closed her eyes, leaning against the bathroom wall. Sebastian, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Then don't, Sebastian Vale said simply. Come clean. Tell them who you really are. You know I can't. Not yet. Eleanor. His voice softened, became intimate in the way that made her chest tight. "You're the most brilliant woman I know. You've built something extraordinary. Why are you letting them make you feel small?" Through the bathroom door, Eleanor could hear the muffled sounds of her family's laughter. They were probably discussing her absence, analyzing her reaction, planning their next move in the campaign to claim her inheritance. "Because," she said quietly, "sometimes the best way to win is to let everyone else think they're already winning." Sebastian was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're playing a dangerous game." "The only game I know how to play." "And if they push too hard? If they try to force your hand?" Eleanor looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The fluorescent light was unflattering, highlighting the exhaustion in her eyes and the careful ordinariness of her appearance. But underneath the surface she could see something else, a quiet strength that had nothing to do with neural crowns or social credit scores. Then they'll learn that still waters run deeper than they imagined. After she hung up, Eleanor stayed in the bathroom for another minute, collecting herself. When she returned to the table, the conversation had shifted, but the underlying current remained the same. Her family wanted something from her, and they weren't going to let it go. "Everything all right?" Marco asked, his dark eyes searching her face. "Fine," Eleanor said, sliding back into her seat. "Just work." "Work?" Vincent shook his head. "Eleanor, you're 29 years old. Don't you want more than just work?" The question was loaded with implications. Around the table, her family watched her with varying degrees of concern, judgment, and calculation. Bianca's neural crown continued to record, feeding their family drama to millions of strangers who would analyze every micro-expression for entertainment. Eleanor met her father's gaze steadily. "I have everything I need." "But do you have everything you want?" Rosa asked gently. Before Elena could answer, her neural interface chimed with a social media alert. Bianca had just posted a new update, a photo of the family dinner with the caption, "Convincing my brilliant sister to let me use the family penthouse for my studio. She's being so generous. Move-in starts next month. Family first, new beginnings." The post already had 10,000 likes. Eleanor stared at her sister across the table, seeing Bianca's nervous smile, the way her fingers fidgeted with her wine glass despite the confident caption she'd just broadcast to the world. "Bianca," Elena said quietly, "we haven't agreed to anything yet." "Yet," Vincent emphasized, as if Elena had just confirmed their eventual success. "But you will. Because you're family, and family takes care of family." The certainty in his voice made Eleanor's chest tighten. Around the table, her relatives nodded agreement, their neural crowns painting them in soft, confident light. They looked like the successful, modern family they'd always worked to become. And Elena looked exactly like what she'd spent years cultivating. The disappointment, the one who needed their guidance to make the right choice. She smiled and reached for her wine glass, taking a small sip while her family planned her future around her. None of them noticed the way her eyes had hardened, or the slight upturn of her lips that suggested she knew something they didn't. Some games, Eleanor reflected, were won in the last move, and she was nowhere near ready to play her hand. The Meridian Tower stretched 60 floors into Manhattan's glittering skyline, its bioluminescent facade pulsing with the rhythms of the city's neural network. Eleanor's keycard, a simple plastic rectangle that looked decades out of date, granted her access to the private express elevator that whisked her to the 47th floor in silence. The penthouse doors opened to reveal what her family had never seen. 12,000 square feet of pre-war elegance transformed into something that would make architectural historians weep. Original hardwood floors gleamed under recessed lighting that adjusted automatically to complement the natural light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The space felt alive, breathing with hidden technology that enhanced rather than overwhelmed the classical bones of the apartment. Eleanor kicked off her worn sneakers and let her neural interface sync with the penthouse's private network. Immediately, the space began its evening transformation, Walls slid back to reveal hidden chambers. The modest living room expanded into an elegant salon. What had appeared to be a simple bookshelf rotated to unveil a climate-controlled library, housing first editions worth more than most people's homes. But the real magic happened in the back rooms, where Eleanor's true empire lived and breathed. Her fingers danced across a holographic interface, summoning data streams that painted the air in soft blue light. Tonight's guest list materialized 43 of the world's most influential minds, each paying $10,000 to attend her monthly literary salon. The Neural Literary Collective, as the cultural press had dubbed it, had become the most exclusive intellectual gathering on the East Coast. Eleanor's neural crown, not the basic model she wore in public, but a custom piece worth more than her father's restaurant, seamlessly integrated with the Penthouse's systems. Guest dietary preferences, conversation topics, even personality compatibility algorithms flowed through her consciousness like a digital symphony. She paused at her bedroom's smart mirror, watching her reflection shift from tired librarian to something else entirely. The mirror's AR overlay suggested wardrobe options based on tonight's guest profiles and social dynamics. Eleanor dismissed them all, choosing instead a vintage Valentino gown that had once belonged to a literary icon. Black silk that whispered against her skin and made her eyes look mysterious rather than merely tired. The transformation wasn't just clothing. As Eleanor moved through her private rituals, yoga sequences that activated her neural crown's biometric monitoring, meditation that synchronized her brainwaves with the Penthouse's ambient systems, her entire presence shifted. Gone was the dowdy librarian who took the subway. In her place stood someone who commanded attention without demanding it. Her bathroom's neural interface chimed softly. "Eleanor, Sebastian Vale is requesting priority access. Shall I admit him?" Eleanor's pulse quickened. "How early is he?" 47 minutes before the first scheduled arrival. She smiled at her reflection. Sebastian never arrived early to anything unless he had something important to discuss. "Let him up." Eleanor was adjusting the salon's atmospheric lighting when the elevator opened. Sebastian Vale stepped out like he owned not just the building, but the entire concept of masculine elegance. His neural crown was invisible, the latest tech integrated directly into his skull, but his presence filled the space with the kind of confidence that came from reshaping entire industries. "You're beautiful," he said simply, crossing the room with predatory grace. "You're early." Eleanor's voice carried a note of warning, but her body betrayed her. The way she angled toward him, the slight parting of her lips. Sebastian read her signals like a master linguist. "I needed to see you before—" He gestured toward the salon's preparation. "Before you become the untouchable hostess again." "I'm always untouchable." The words were meant as a challenge, but Sebastian heard the invitation underneath. He moved closer, close enough that Elena could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hand traced the line of her jaw, fingers barely making contact. "Not to me." Eleanor's neural crown detected elevated heart rate and released a subtle cocktail of hormones that made every nerve ending hyper-aware. "Sebastian." "I've been patient," he said, his voice dropping to that intimate register that made her forget every rational thought. 6 months of stolen moments, secret messages, pretending we're just business associates when what I want is to— "What you want," Elena interrupted, stepping back before she lost herself completely, "is to control the narrative, just like everyone else in my life." Sebastian's expression darkened. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Eleanor moved to the windows, putting physical distance between them. The city spread out below, millions of neural interfaces creating a constellation of human connection. "You want me to announce us to the world. Make it official, but you've never asked what I want. What do you want?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Eleanor could feel Sebastian watching her, analyzing every micro-expression the way he evaluated literary properties for their commercial potential. "I want," Eleanor said carefully, "to choose the timing myself. And when will that be? When your family finally accepts that you're more than they think you are, when your sister stops trying to steal your inheritance, when your cousin stops looking at you like you're a puzzle he needs to solve." Each word hit like a precision strike. Sebastian had been watching, learning, understanding her family dynamics with the same intensity he brought to everything else. "Marco doesn't look at me like a puzzle," Eleanor said defensively. Sebastian's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Marco looks at you like you're prey he's finally decided to hunt, and the fact that you don't see it worries me more than I can express." Before Elena could respond, her neural interface chimed. The first guests were arriving. She could see them through the building's security system, familiar faces from the worlds of literature, technology, and old money. People who came to her salon because she offered something they couldn't find anywhere else: authentic intellectual discourse without the performance art. "We're not finished with this conversation," Sebastian said, but his demeanor had already shifted. The intimate man was disappearing, replaced by the public figure who could hold his own in any room. "Yes," Elena replied, activating her hostess protocols. "We are." The salon filled with the kind of people who appeared on magazine covers without trying. Eleanor moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her neural crown seamlessly managing everything from temperature controls to conversation facilitation. She was the invisible conductor of an orchestra that played itself. "Elena, darling." Meryl Streep materialized beside her, champagne flute in hand. The legendary actress wore her age like a crown, her neural interface so subtle it was barely visible. "This month's theme is particularly inspired. The death of privacy in the age of neural intimacy. Very timely. I thought you'd appreciate the irony," Elena replied, noting how Meryl's presence drew attention without demanding it. "Speaking of which, how's the new project coming?" "Beautifully complex," Meryl's eyes sparkled. "Rather like tonight's hostess, I imagine." Before Eleanor could respond, her neural crown alerted her to an unexpected arrival. Marco Rossi stood in the Penthouse lobby, arguing with her building's AI security system. He looked good: expensive suit, confident posture, the kind of presence that suggested success without shouting about it. He also looked furious. "Excuse me," Eleanor murmured to Meryl, making her way toward the entrance. Her neural crown was already calculating damage control scenarios. Marco's presence could destabilize everything she'd built. "Marcus," she said, opening the door before he could announce himself. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" Marco stepped into the foyer, his eyes taking in details that most people would miss. The hidden tech, the careful staging, the way voices from the salon carried just enough to suggest exclusive conversation without revealing content. "Eleanor, what the hell is this place?" "My home. Your home." Marco's neural crown was working overtime, she could tell, probably running property valuations, guest identification protocols, social network analysis. "The same home you've been telling us is just a modest apartment." Eleanor's trained composure didn't waver. "I never said modest. You assumed modest." Marco stepped deeper into the space, and Eleanor saw the exact moment when comprehension hit. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition, to something that looked almost like hunger. "My God," he breathed. "Elena, this is... How long have you been living like this?" "Like what?" "Like someone who matters." The words came out harsher than he'd probably intended. "Like someone with real power." From the salon came the sound of cultured laughter. Eleanor's guests were enjoying themselves, oblivious to the family drama playing out in her foyer. Her neural crown painted social dynamics in her peripheral vision. Who was talking to whom, which conversations were flagging when she needed to intervene. "I should get back to my guests," Elena said. Your guests. Marco's voice carried a note of wonder that made Elena's chest tighten. Who are they? And more importantly, who are you? Before she could answer, Sebastian appeared in the doorway. His smile was polite, professional, and absolutely deadly. Elena, is everything all right? Marco's neural crown immediately identified the newcomer. Elena watched her cousin's expression shift as data streams updated him on Sebastian Vale's net worth, professional achievements, and social connections. Sebastian Vale, Marco said, extending his hand. I'm Marco Rossi, Eleanor's cousin. Ah, Sebastian's grip looked casual, but Eleanor knew better. The lawyer? The successful lawyer, Marco corrected, his competitive instincts flaring. Of course. Sebastian's smile didn't waver. Eleanor's mentioned you. Eleanor watched the interplay with growing dread. Two alpha males sizing each other up in her foyer while 40 of the world's most influential minds waited for her attention in the next room. I should introduce Marco to some of the other guests, Eleanor said quickly. Should you? Sebastian's tone was neutral, but Eleanor caught the warning underneath. I wasn't aware he was on tonight's list. He's not, Eleanor admitted. Marco, this really isn't a good time. Actually, Marco interrupted, his gaze moving between Eleanor and Sebastian with newfound understanding. I think this is the perfect time. Eleanor, we need to talk. About a lot of things, apparently. Eleanor's neural crown chimed with alerts. Her guests were noticing the delay. Conversations were becoming stilted. The carefully orchestrated evening was beginning to fracture. Fine, Elena said. 5 minutes. She led Marco to her private study, leaving Sebastian to manage the salon. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, activating privacy shields that would block any neural interface from recording their conversation. Marco stood in the center of the room, slowly turning to take in the hidden library, the vintage furniture, the subtle signs of extraordinary wealth. How long? He asked simply. How long what? How long have you been lying to us? Eleanor moved to her desk, needing the physical barrier between them. I've never lied to anyone. Semantics. Marco's eyes were hard. You've been letting us believe you're struggling, letting us worry about you, letting Bianca plan to take your apartment because she needs it more than you do. Maybe I wanted to see who you all really were, Eleanor said quietly. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Marco's expression shifted, and Eleanor saw the moment when her meaning hit home. You've been testing us. I've been living my life. While we made fools of ourselves trying to help you, Marco's voice rose. Eleanor, do you have any idea what this looks like? What it says about your opinion of your own family? It says, Elena replied carefully, that I learned early to value character over cash flow. Marco was quiet for a long moment, and Elena could practically see him reassessing every interaction they'd ever had. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder, but also impressed despite himself. You're not the person I thought you were. No, Elena agreed, I'm not. The question is, who are you really? Before Elena could answer, her neural crown exploded with alerts. Social media feeds, news streams, viral content warnings. She accessed the data and her blood turned to ice. Bianca had just posted a live video from outside the Meridian Tower, claiming to be visiting my sister's secret penthouse party. The footage showed the building's exclusive entrance, the high-security lobby, the obvious wealth on display. Her follower count was climbing by the thousands as people shared the content across platforms. We have a problem, Eleanor said. Marco's neural crown had caught the same feeds. His expression darkened as he processed the implications. Bianca's here. She's downstairs, broadcasting to 2 million followers about my secret lifestyle. Shit. Marco ran a hand through his hair. Elena, this is going to explode. The family, the media, everyone's going to want answers. Elena was already moving, her neural crown calculating response strategies, damage control, public relations, crisis management. "Not if I control the narrative first," she said. Chapter 5. Bianca stood in the Meridian Tower's lobby like a conquering general, her neural crown streaming everything to her rapidly growing audience. She'd dressed for maximum impact. A white designer dress that photographed beautifully under the lobby's smart lighting, jewelry that caught and reflected the building's bioluminescent displays. "Hey, beautiful humans," she chirped to her camera. "So I'm here visiting my sister Elena, who apparently has been living this whole secret lifestyle in one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings. Like literally nobody in our family knew about this." Eleanor watched through the building's security feed as her sister played to the audience. Bianca was good at this, the perfect balance of relatability and aspiration, making her followers feel like they were part of an exclusive discovery. "The thing is," Bianca continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "Eleanor's been letting our whole family think she was struggling financially, like we've been worried about her. And now I find out she's been living in luxury this whole time." The comment feed exploded with reactions. Eleanor's neural crown passed the sentiment analysis in real time. 73% supportive of Bianca, 18% critical of family drama content, 9% asking for more details about Eleanor. "I need to get down there," Eleanor said. Sebastian appeared beside her, having abandoned the salon to Elena's automated systems. "Let me handle this." "No." Elena's voice carried absolute authority. "This is family business." "Family business that's being broadcast to millions of people," Sebastian pointed out. "Eleanor, once this goes viral, and it will, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle." Marco stepped between them, his expression grim. "She's right. This needs to stay in the family." He looked at Eleanor with something that might have been respect. "But Eleanor, you can't just ignore this." Bianca's narrative is already spreading. Eleanor's neural crown showed her the data streams. Number Rossi sisters trending on 3 platforms, news outlets picking up the story, think pieces being drafted about family dynamics in the neural age. The carefully constructed life she'd built was crumbling in real time. "Then I changed the narrative," Eleanor said simply. She moved to her private communication system, fingers dancing across interfaces that most people couldn't even perceive. Within seconds, she'd activated protocols that had been dormant for months. "Elena," Sebastian's voice carried a warning, "what are you doing?" "Something I should have done a long time ago." Eleanor's neural crown connected to the building's main system, overriding normal security protocols. Throughout the Meridian Tower, every smart surface flickered to life. Elevators, lobby displays, even the bioluminescent facade began pulsing in synchronized patterns. In the lobby, Bianca's livestream suddenly expanded beyond her personal neural crown. The building itself became part of her broadcast, displaying information that made her audience gasp in real time. Property records, ownership documents, financial disclosure statements. Elena Rossi, the data showed, didn't just live in the penthouse, she owned the entire building. Bianca's smile faltered as she processed what her own audience was seeing. The comments shifted from supportive to stunned to accusatory. "Elena owns the building," Bianca whispered, forgetting she was still broadcasting. That can't be right." But the data streams didn't lie. Eleanor's neural crown had pulled public records, tax documents, business filings. The Meridian Tower, purchased in 2043 for $67 million. Current value, $120 million. Owner, E.M. Rossi Holdings. Marco whistled softly. "Elena, you own this place." "I own a lot of places," Elena replied, her attention split between multiple data streams. "Real estate portfolio, tech investments, venture capital fund. The literary salon is just a hobby." Sebastian's expression was unreadable. A hobby that generates more revenue than most Fortune 500 companies. Elena shrugged. I like books. Downstairs, Bianca was struggling to maintain her composure as her audience demanded explanations she didn't have. Her follower count was still climbing, but the sentiment had shifted. Now people were questioning why she'd been trying to manipulate her clearly wealthy sister into giving up property. I think, Elena said, watching her sister's public meltdown through multiple camera angles, it's time for a family meeting. She activated the building's neural announcement system, her voice filling every apartment simultaneously. Attention residents, we'll be having a brief family discussion in the lobby. My apologies for any inconvenience. Marco stared at her. You're going to confront Bianca? In public? I'm going to tell the truth, Elena corrected. Finally. As they rode the elevator down, Eleanor caught her reflection in the smart glass doors. The dowdy librarian was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she could buy and sell small countries. The transformation wasn't just external. Something fundamental had shifted in her posture, her expression, her entire presence. Eleanor, Sebastian said quietly, are you sure about this? She met his gaze steadily. For the first time in years, I'm sure about everything. The elevator doors opened to reveal chaos. Bianca stood in the center of the lobby, her live stream now being picked up by major news networks. Building residents had gathered to watch the spectacle, their neural interfaces recording everything for their own social media accounts. Eleanor stepped out of the elevator, and the entire lobby fell silent. She looked nothing like the woman who'd ridden the subway that morning. Designer gown, confident posture, the kind of presence that made people step back and pay attention. Her neural crown was no longer hidden. It gleamed silver against her dark hair, clearly expensive, clearly powerful. Hello, Bianca, Eleanor said, her voice carrying clearly through the lobby's acoustic systems. Having fun? Bianca's neural crown was still streaming, but her expression had shifted from confident to confused to something approaching fear. Elena, what are you wearing? The truth, Elena replied simply. Something I should have tried on a long time ago. The crowd pressed closer, sensing that they were witnessing something significant. News drones had somehow made it into the lobby. Elena's neural crown detected at least 6 different media outlets covering the story in real time. Bianca, Eleanor continued, her voice gentle but firm, you wanted the Penthouse for your content creation, so let's create some content. She gestured to the building's main display, which flickered to life with financial data that made several audience members gasp audibly. Eleanor's net worth, $847 million. Annual income, $67 million. Charitable donations over the past 5 years, $127 million. My sister, Elena announced to Bianca's audience, has been trying to convince me to give her my apartment because she needs it more than I do. What do you think? Does she need it more? The silence in the lobby was deafening. Even the building's AI systems seemed to pause, waiting for someone to break the tension. Finally, Bianca found her voice. Eleanor, I don't understand. If you have all this money, why were you living like what? Eleanor asked. Like someone who values substance over surface. Like someone who measures success by impact rather than income. Bianca's neural crown was still streaming, but her audience had grown restless. The comments were no longer supportive. People were calling her out for trying to manipulate her wealthy sister, questioning her authenticity, demanding explanations she couldn't provide. Turn off the stream, Bianca, Elena said gently. I can't, Bianca whispered. This is my career. No, Elena replied. This is your wake-up call. She gestured again, and the building's displays shifted to show a different kind of data. Bianca's engagement rates over the past 6 months, declining viewership, failing sponsor deals. The desperate spiral that had led to this moment. Your career was already over. Elena said quietly. You just hadn't admitted it yet. The words were brutal in their honesty, but Elena's tone carried compassion rather than cruelty. She was offering truth, not punishment. Bianca's neural crown finally went dark. The livestream ended. In the sudden absence of digital performance, she looked very young and very lost. Elena, she said, tears beginning to flow, I didn't know. I thought you needed help. I know, Elena replied. That's what I was counting on. The crowd began to disperse, sensing that the show was over. News drones followed other stories. The lobby returned to its usual elegant silence. But the damage was done. Eleanor's secret was out, broadcast to millions, analyzed by algorithms, disseminated across networks she couldn't control. Sebastian moved to her side, his presence reassuring despite the chaos they'd just unleashed. No going back now, he murmured. Eleanor looked up at him, seeing something in his expression she'd never noticed before. Not just desire or professional interest, but genuine admiration. Good, she said. I'm tired of going backward. As they rode the elevator back to the penthouse, Eleanor's neural crown buzzed with thousands of messages. Interview requests, business proposals, social invitations, family members demanding explanations. She ignored them all. Instead, she thought about the children at the Brooklyn Library and the literary salon waiting upstairs, and the man beside her who'd seen through her performance from the very beginning. Some secrets, she realized, were meant to be revealed, and some performances were meant to end. Giuseppe's restaurant hummed with neural energy as the Rossi family's extended network converged for what Vincent had announced as Bianca's pre-birthday celebration. The vintage neon sign outside cast warm light through smart glass windows that automatically adjusted their opacity based on the diner's privacy preferences. Inside, 3 generations of family members filled the private dining room, their neural crowns creating a soft constellation of status symbols. Eleanor arrived last deliberately. She'd spent an hour in her penthouse bathroom, staring at her reflection, while her neural interface calculated optimal strategies for the evening ahead. The dowdy librarian cardigan hung in her closet, replaced by a simple black dress that cost more than most people's cars, but looked unremarkable to untrained eyes. Her neural crown was back to its basic disguise, cheap plastic and outdated circuitry that fooled everyone who wanted to be fooled. Vincent stood as she entered, his arms spread wide in theatrical welcome. There she is, my brilliant daughter, finally ready to make the right decision for this family. The assembled relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, turned to Elena with expressions ranging from expectant to pitying. They'd all been briefed, she realized. This wasn't a celebration, it was an intervention disguised as a party. Elena! Bianca bounced from her seat, radiant in a designer dress that photographed beautifully under the restaurant's smart lighting. Her neural crown was live-streaming everything, of course, painting her in flattering angles while documenting the family dynamics for her audience. I'm so excited! Dad told everyone about our arrangement. Eleanor took her assigned seat between Marco and her teenage cousin Sophia, who was furiously documenting everything for her own emerging influence portfolio. What arrangement is that? Don't be modest, Rosa chided gently, not looking up from her neural feed. Vincent explained how you've agreed to share the penthouse with Bianca. It's so generous, dear. Marco leaned closer, his expensive cologne mixing with the scent of ambition and barely contained desire. Since his divorce, he'd been circling Elena like a predator who'd finally identified interesting prey. Cugina, you look different tonight. Have you done something with your hair? It's called washing it, Elena replied dryly. The comment drew laughter from the table, but Marco's eyes narrowed with interest rather than offense. His neural crown was working overtime, she could tell, probably running facial analysis, stress detection, micro-expression algorithms. He was treating her like a case he needed to crack. Vincent raised his wine glass, commanding attention through sheer force of personality. Before we eat, I want to acknowledge something important. Eleanor has finally decided to put family first. Starting next month, Bianca will be moving into the Penthouse to expand her digital empire. The table erupted in approving murmurs and congratulations directed at Bianca, who basked in the attention while her neural crown captured every moment for posterity. Eleanor sipped her wine and said nothing. Now, Vincent continued, settling back into his patriarch role, let's talk about the practical details. Elena, you'll need to clear out by the 15th. Rosa's already found you a nice one-bedroom in Park Slope, much more appropriate for your lifestyle. My lifestyle, Elena repeated. A single woman working in public service, Vincent clarified. No need for all that space when Bianca can put it to productive use. Marco shifted beside her, his knee brushing against hers under the table. Eleanor, you've been so quiet about this whole arrangement. Are you sure you're comfortable with the timeline? His voice carried concern, but Elena caught the predatory interest underneath. Marco had always been competitive, always needed to win, and lately he'd been looking at her like she was a prize he'd overlooked, but now wanted to claim. I'm comfortable with a lot of things, Elena said carefully. Such as? Marco's smile was all teeth. You're so mysterious lately, Kugina, like you're hiding some deep secret. Sophia looked up from her recording device. Maybe Elena has a secret boyfriend. That would be so romantic. The suggestion sent ripples of amusement around the table. Eleanor's unmarried status had been a source of family concern for years. Their disappointment wrapped in loving worry about her lonely future. Eleanor doesn't have time for boyfriends, Bianca laughed, checking her engagement metrics. She's too busy with her books and her little kids at the library. Maybe that's changing, Marco said, his hand settling on Eleanor's wrist. Maybe Eleanor's ready to let someone take care of her for once. Eleanor's neural interface detected elevated stress hormones and offered chemical assistance, which she declined. Instead, she focused on the weight of Marco's fingers against her pulse point, the calculating gleam in his eyes, the way the entire table had subtly shifted to watch their interaction. Her phone buzzed, then again. The contact name made her pulse quicken. Sebastian Vale, with his signature crown emoji. Marco noticed immediately. His neural crown was probably intercepting the signal, reading the sender information, analyzing the timing. Sebastian Vale? Marco's eyebrows rose with theatrical curiosity. Elena, who's Sebastian Vale? Some book club friend? The table's attention focused on Eleanor like a spotlight. Bianca's neural crown adjusted its angle to catch her sister's reaction. Vincent leaned forward with paternal interest. Rosa finally looked up from her social feeds. Something like that, Eleanor said carefully. Come on, Marco pressed, his fingers tightening on her wrist. Sebastian Vale sounds important. What does he do? Assistant librarian? Bookstore clerk? The laughter that erupted around the table had a sharp edge. Eleanor felt the familiar burn of being patronized by people who loved her, but had never bothered to truly see her. Her phone buzzed again. This time she glanced at the message, and despite everything, she smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face entirely. Marco caught the change immediately. What's so funny? Elena looked around the table at faces she'd known her entire life, people who'd raised her, supported her, worried about her, and never once considered that their assumptions might be wrong. She thought about the children at the library who believed in magic, and the literary salon waiting in her penthouse, and the man whose message had just made her heart race. You know what, Marco? Elena stood gracefully, her movement commanding attention through sheer unexpected confidence. You're right. I think it's time you all met Sebastian. The table fell silent. Even Bianca's neural crown paused its recording as everyone processed Elena's sudden shift in demeanor. Eleanor activated her neural interface, placing the call while 40 pairs of eyes watched her every move. Sebastian? Hi, it's Elena. Yes, I know we agreed no interruptions during family time, but they want to meet you. Are you free to stop by Giuseppe's on 5th? Bring the usual. She ended the call and settled back into her seat, ignoring the explosion of questions and speculation that erupted around her. Elena, Vincent's voice carried warning, what have you done? I've invited my boyfriend to dinner, Elena replied simply. I thought you'd be happy. You've been worried about me being alone. 23 minutes later, the restaurant's main entrance chimed with an arrival alert that made the maitre d' straighten his spine and adjust his tie. Elena's neural interface showed her the security feed, Sebastian Vale stepping out of a hydrogen cell Bentley that cost more than most houses, followed by two discreet bodyguards carrying what appeared to be a case of wine that probably cost more than Vincent's monthly revenue. The restaurant's AI system immediately began updating patron profiles, cross-referencing faces, calculating net worths, and social influence scores. By the time Sebastian reached their private dining room, every neural crown in the building was buzzing with recognition alerts. Marco saw him first. Eleanor watched her cousin's face drain of colour as Sebastian Vale, the Sebastian Vale, literary agent to Nobel laureates and best-selling authors worth an estimated $900 million, walked into their family dinner like he owned not just the room, but the entire concept of masculine elegance. Holy shit, Marco whispered, loud enough for the entire table to hear. Eleanor, that's Sebastian Vale. I know, Eleanor replied calmly. Sebastian moved through the restaurant like gravity bent around him. His neural crown was invisible, the latest tech integrated directly into his skull. But his presence filled the space with the kind of confidence that came from reshaping entire industries before breakfast. He stopped beside Eleanor's chair, ignoring the 40-odd faces staring at him with varying degrees of shock, recognition, and desperate calculation. "Darling," he said, his voice carrying the kind of intimacy that made several family members visibly uncomfortable. "I brought the 1947 Cheval Blanc you mentioned." He gestured to his bodyguards, who began setting bottles on the table that Vincent's neural crown immediately identified as worth more than his restaurant. "And I took the liberty of clearing my schedule for tomorrow night's salon," Merrill confirmed, and so did Stephen King. Eleanor smiled, not the careful, controlled expression she'd worn all evening, but something radiant and genuine. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Sebastian's hand found her shoulder, the touch possessive and protective. "After 6 months of secret dinners and stolen weekends, I'm done hiding what we have." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor could practically hear neural crowns working overtime as her family processed the implications. Sebastian Vale, 9-figure net worth, literary royalty, dating their overlooked librarian cousin. Vincent was the first to recover, rising from his chair with the desperate charm of a man realizing he'd catastrophically misjudged a situation. "Mr. Vale, this is unexpected. I'm Vincent Rossi, Eleanor's father." Sebastian's handshake was polite but brief. "Vincent, Eleanor's told me so much about you." "Has she?" Vincent's laugh sounded strained. "All good things, I hope." "Mostly." Sebastian's smile could have frozen helium. Rosa stood as well, her social instincts finally overriding her shock. "Mr. Vale, please sit with us. We had no idea Elena was… that you two were… dating," Sebastian supplied smoothly. "For 6 months, though Eleanor insisted on keeping it private." Something about not wanting to deal with family pressure. Marco's neural crown was frantically pulling up articles, interviews, social media profiles, anything to understand how his overlooked cousin had somehow landed the most eligible bachelor in the literary world. "Elena," his voice cracked slightly, "how long have you been… how did you even meet?" Elena looked at Sebastian, something passing between them that made the air crackle with intimate understanding. "At one of my events." "Events?" Bianca's voice was small, confused. Her neural crown had stopped recording entirely. Sebastian settled into the empty chair that materialized beside Eleanor, his movement casual but claiming. Elena hosts the most exclusive literary salon in Manhattan. I've been trying to get an invitation for 2 years. Vincent's neural crown was working overtime now, pulling public records, social media mentions, cultural articles. Eleanor watched her father's expression shift as data streams updated him on his daughter's secret life. The Neural Literary Collective, Vincent read from his interface, his voice growing stronger with each word. Featured in Vogue, The Times, Architectural Digest, monthly events for cultural leaders, tech innovators, and creative visionaries. He looked at Elena as if seeing her for the first time. You're the mysterious hostess everyone talks about, but no one can identify. Mystery solved, Elena said lightly. Marco leaned forward, his competitive instincts finally overriding his shock. Elena, this is incredible. But I don't understand. If you've been running these high-profile events, if you're connected to all these influential people, why are you working as a librarian? Because I like it, Elena replied simply. But the money, Rosa interjected, the opportunities are considerable, Sebastian interrupted, his territorial instincts flaring as Marco moved closer to Elena. Elena's salon generates more revenue than most Fortune 500 companies. Her waiting list has 800 names, including 3 Nobel laureates and half the New York Times bestseller list. Bianca's neural crown had rebooted and was frantically scanning the internet for information about her sister. Elena, there are photos of you with celebrities. Designer gowns, red carpet events. How is this possible? Magic, Eleanor said dryly. Sebastian laughed, a rich sound that made several family members look between them with dawning understanding of just how deep their connection ran. Your sister is brilliant, Bianca. She's raised $2.3 million for literacy programs while building the most influential cultural network on the East Coast. Vincent's expression was shifting rapidly as his neural interface delivered impact statistics, social influence scores, networking valuations. His overlooked daughter wasn't just successful, she was a power player in a world he'd never even imagined. Eleanor, he said carefully, why didn't you tell us? You never asked, Elena replied. You assumed I was struggling, so I let you assume. Marco's hand found hers across the table, his touch desperate now rather than predatory. God, Elena, you've been hiding in plain sight. Here I thought you needed taking care of when you've been running the literary world. Sebastian's eyes turned arctic. Elena doesn't need taking care of. She needs partners who understand her vision. The territorial undercurrent was unmistakable. Marco's neural crown was probably calculating his chances against a billionaire literary agent and finding the odds unfavorable. Eleanor watched the interplay with growing amusement. 2 alpha males sizing each other up over her family dinner table while her relatives frantically recalibrated their understanding of her entire existence. The Penthouse, Bianca said suddenly. Elena, if you've been hosting these events, if celebrities are coming to your apartment, then it's not exactly suitable for content creation, Elena finished gently. Vincent's face had gone red, not with anger, but with the dawning humiliation of a man realizing he'd just spent the evening trying to manipulate someone who could buy his restaurant without checking her account balance. Eleanor, his voice shook slightly, I don't understand. If you have all this success, all these connections, why were you letting us think you needed help? Elena looked around the table at faces that had spent years viewing her with loving condescension, gentle pity, concerned disappointment. Because I wanted to see who you all really were when you thought I had nothing to offer. The words hit the table like a small explosion. Eleanor watched comprehension dawn in expressions that ranged from shame to anger to desperate recalculation. You've been testing us, Marco said quietly. I've been living my life, Elena corrected. You've been revealing your values. Vincent stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with harsh finality. This is ridiculous. Eleanor, you've been lying to this family for years. I've never lied to anyone, Elena replied calmly. Semantics! Vincent's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, but it cracked with the desperation of a man losing control of a situation he'd never understood. You've been making fools of us, letting us worry about you, letting Bianca plan her future around helping you. I never asked for help, Elena pointed out. You embarrassed this family with your poverty act. Vincent's face was purple now, his neural crown flashing warning signals about elevated blood pressure and stress hormones. Ungrateful! After everything we've done for you. The slap came so fast that Elena's neural interface barely registered the movement. Vincent's palm connected with her cheek in a sharp crack that silenced the entire restaurant. Elena sat very still for a moment, her hand rising to touch the spot where her father's palm had left a burning imprint. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, broken only by the soft hum of neural interfaces and the distant clatter of kitchen equipment. When Eleanor finally spoke, her voice was steady, quiet, and absolutely deadly. You know what, Papa? You're right. I have been ungrateful. She stood slowly, her movement commanding attention through sheer controlled power. Ungrateful for never having to worry about money again. Ungrateful for building a career that matters. Ungrateful for finding a man who values my mind as much as my influence. Her gaze swept the table, landing on each family member with surgical precision. And especially ungrateful for being raised by people who taught me that a person's worth isn't measured in dollars. Oh wait, that wasn't you. That was Aunt Maria. Sebastian rose beside her, his presence radiating protective fury. Vincent, you just struck the most remarkable woman I've ever met, a woman who's built an empire while still finding time to read to underprivileged children every Tuesday. A woman who's raised more money for literacy programs than most foundations see in a decade. He moved closer to Elena, his hand settling on her lower back with possessive tenderness. A woman who's been too generous to show you exactly how much more successful she is than anyone at this table. Marco started to speak, but Sebastian's attention had shifted, becoming something that made the lawyer in him recognize superior predatory instincts. Sebastian dropped to one knee beside Elena's chair. The entire restaurant fell silent. Conversations at other tables ceased. Servers stopped mid-motion. Even the kitchen noise faded as word spread that something significant was happening in the private dining room. Elena Rossi, Sebastian's voice carried clearly through the sudden hush. You are brilliant, beautiful, and the only woman who's ever made me want to be worthy of her intelligence. He produced a ring box from his jacket, vintage Cartier, the kind of piece that appeared in museum exhibitions. Will you marry me? Elena's hand flew to her mouth, her careful composure finally cracking. Sebastian, you can't. Not here. Not like this. Yes, here. Yes, like this. His smile was devastating. And before you say anything about keeping it private, the Times already knows about us. Tomorrow's style section is running our story. The proposal hung in the air like a challenge. Eleanor looked down at the man kneeling beside her, then around the table at family members whose expressions ranged from shock to calculation to barely concealed envy. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes. Sebastian's kiss was passionate enough to make several relatives look away, and professional enough to photograph beautifully when the images inevitably leaked to social media. The restaurant erupted in applause, but Elena barely heard it over the sound of her own heartbeat. When they finally broke apart, Sebastian stood and addressed the table with the casual authority of someone announcing a business merger. Eleanor and I will be married in 6 months. The reception will be held in our Penthouse library, assuming Eleanor decides any of you deserve invitations. Epilogue, 6 months later. The penthouse library glowed with warm light from hidden fixtures that made first edition spines gleam like jewels. Eleanor's wedding dress was vintage Valentino, the same designer who'd clothed literary icons, and Sebastian's smile suggested he'd won the greatest prize in the world. They danced among towering bookshelves while Manhattan glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, surrounded by family who finally understood exactly who Elena had always been. Bianca approached during a quiet moment, her neural crown dark for once. She'd pivoted to book content after Eleanor's revelation, and her authentic passion for literature had gained her 500,000 new followers who actually cared about her recommendations. "Eleanor," she said softly, "I need to apologize for everything. I was so focused on what I thought I needed that I never saw what you'd already built." Eleanor hugged her sister, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume mixed with genuine humility. "You saw what I wanted you to see. But that was my choice, not your fault." "Why did you test us?" Bianca asked. "Really?" Eleanor looked around the library at faces she'd known her entire life, people who'd finally learned to see past their assumptions. "Because I needed to know that when I did share my success, you'd value it for the right reasons." Vincent appeared beside them, his expression carrying the weight of 6 months' worth of reflection and several sessions with a family therapist Eleanor had quietly funded. "Bambina," he said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said that night. About Aunt Maria teaching you values I never did." Eleanor waited, giving him space to find his words. "I was wrong," Vincent continued, "about what matters, about what success looks like, about who you are." He gestured around the library, at the celebration, at the life Eleanor had built. "This is real success. Using your gifts to lift others up, not just yourself." Eleanor kissed her father's cheek, tasting tears she hadn't expected. "I forgive you, Papa, but I won't forget." "I wouldn't want you to," Vincent replied. "Some lessons need to stick." Marco approached as Vincent moved away, his expression carefully neutral. The past 6 months had been difficult for him, watching Elena's public emergence, her engagement, her obvious happiness with a man who understood her in ways Marco never had. "Congratulations, Cugina," he said simply. "You deserve this." "Thank you." Eleanor's smile was genuine. "Marco, I want you to know what happened between us, the attraction, the competition, it wasn't personal." "Wasn't it?" Marco's laugh held no bitterness. "I spent years overlooking the most interesting woman in the family because I couldn't see past my own assumptions." "That's pretty personal." Elena touched his arm gently. "Then learn from it. Find someone who challenges your assumptions instead of confirming them." As the evening wound down and guests began filtering toward elevators, Eleanor found herself alone with Sebastian in the center of the library that had become the heart of their shared empire. "Any regrets?" Sebastian asked, pulling her close for a dance that was theirs alone. Eleanor considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, she'd been the family disappointment, hiding her success behind careful mediocrity. Tonight, she was Eleanor Vale, literary power broker, philanthropic innovator, wife to the man who'd seen through her performance from the very beginning. "Only one," she said finally. Sebastian's eyebrows rose. "What's that?" Eleanor smiled, the expression radiant with hard-won confidence. "I regret waiting so long to stop hiding." They danced among the books that had brought them together, surrounded by family who finally saw her worth, in the space she'd built by choosing substance over surface, character over cash. Some games, Eleanor reflected, were worth the long play, and some victories tasted sweetest when they'd been earned rather than given. Outside the windows, Manhattan pulsed with neural light and digital ambition. But inside the library, surrounded by wisdom that had outlasted empires, Eleanor and Sebastian wrote the next chapter of a story that proved the oldest truth of all. Real wealth couldn't be bought or sold or stolen. It could only be earned, shared, and passed down to those wise enough to recognize its value.